Ladies and gentlemen, doctors, on my behalf, welcome and thank you for being here. Yes, my name is Rob Velez. I'm a senior partner and director in law firms in the Architect Group, and we specialise in the information, administration, accounting, and especially the taxation aspects of commercial, corporate, property and trust structures, and we have been for just over 50 years. And the object of today is to simply walk away from here with a little bit more knowledge on commercial structures, especially applied to the medical profession, in order that hopefully you'll be proactive in causing these unique structures, incorporating trusts and companies, to be applied to your assets and your practices and your other businesses in order to receive these benefits that we're going to talk about in this next 4-hour session. So, be patient and trying to keep people away for this long session involving law and tax is another challenge on its own right. But within this limited time of an hour, all we're going to achieve is do a comparison to the typical practitioner housing these personal assets in their personal names and their practices in their personal names, and some of them already in corporations, versus the complete, ideal, holistic trust, property solution, and obviously company solution to receive all these benefits, and obviously taking many aspects into account, including obviously tax planning. Please interrupt me at any point in time if so. We're satisfying any concerns or queries that you have at the end of today's session, and then I'll open the floor and then we'll have hopefully an interactive Q&A. Right, the challenges we all have, whether it's a business owner and obviously the typical practitioner, whether you're talking about legal and accounting as in our aspects and versus the medical, is that we all have one particular key concern. We're going to just do a comparison of a typical Dr. A with our structures, and obviously Dr. B will hopefully housing commercial structures holistically to receive the rewards. And the biggest thing, and obviously that's the key concern, is that there is no risk-free practice. And I'm sure you can agree with that. Is that we are obviously going to be subjected to human error, whether it's ourselves or our staff, and we have, unfortunately, a typical scenario that too many of our practitioners are being sued for whether it is human error and other aspects of their business. And unfortunately, everything that they've worked for the entire lives are now 100% exposed. Next one is that they're obviously also getting their practices to be at risk. We've got to obviously have a solution surely somewhere out there that not only are we going to make sure that our hard-earned assets and investments that we've worked so hard to accumulate are set aside and secure, but obviously protecting what makes us the man in the wealth, being our practices and the internal assets of that practice. Obviously, making use of whatever is available in our laws, and I will repeat that, always within the ambit of our law, maximizing what is available in our legal and tax laws to maximize our rewards. And lastly, obviously taking death into account, we obviously have the opportunity as practitioners and business owners to accumulate decent wealth, and obviously everything personally owned is just going to cause a huge amount of death, costs and taxes that we're going to cover today, and we obviously need to try and do everything within our law to limit those costs and taxes. If we apply now our situation to have these complete commercial structures attached to our assets, our properties, our practices and other businesses, the key and the most important aspect, if we only achieve one thing, that was the whole model with regards to our accounting and our legal divisions nationally. We've got one key aspect to this business, and this is just to have the ideal company and trust structure to receive optimal tax efficiencies, and obviously having these adaptable structures to maximize the tax rewards at the time, but at the same time, we're here to do one thing, and that is the protection of our hard-earned wealth. And that is just without deliberation. That if we can have, and I'm going to do a cost-benefit exercise with you, where we are talking about minuscule amounts of money on an annual and a monthly basis to have the only legal way in separating our hard-earned assets and wealth from ourselves and our practices. And there's nothing else. We need to achieve that. There's nothing else in our law. So we're going to have a situation where we're going to stay entrenched with all our assets in our name and exposed, versus a little bit of legal structure, very little more administration, a little bit more of administration costs, but having only the security and the peace of mind that we have finally worked so hard to build this wealth and future of, and this is the only way to be secure. And then at the same time, limiting these enormous death costs. When it comes to practitioners and business owners, those costs are insurmountable, and obviously a lot of taxes. And have this proper succession plan that is attached to business owners and self-employed professionals like myself and yourself, that is very different to a little succession plan that is applied to the normal staff member and employee. Let's look at that comparison, and hopefully you agree with me that there's very little argument against the fact that we've got to attach some sort of commercial structure to achieve the main objective, Tax is beautiful, maximize reward. Having these death costs being set aside. But our main job is the only legal way to finally secure our assets. And that is what it's all about. First one, let's look at all the benefits of this legal structure that we're going to get to. So the first part, what I want to do is look at the benefits of having these commercial structures attached to us and what the ideal commercial structure should be for practitioners to receive these rewards. And like I said, the main thing is about asset protection. Is there such a thing as a risk-free business or practice? Is there an opportunity that we are going to be subjected to some sort of claim or value in business that we can't control? And then the answer has got to be that some people have low-risk practices and others have high-risk practices, but there's no risk-free practice. So in other words, we are attached to something that has the opportunity to come back to bite us. And you can have all the insurance in the world, and we'll talk about PR cover now. It's very inexpensive. Right? The PR cover you have as practitioners are very cheap, aren't they? Especially for gynecologists. Easy to handle, isn't it? A very minuscule part of our income. It's becoming insurmountable and unaffordable. But at the same time, it doesn't mean that we're not going to have our assets still exposed despite all the PR cover that we have. We need to be attached to the structure that we can separate. This is the only way in law. Imagine the situation, we're going to do a little cost of benefit exercise. It's literally thousands of rands once off to create them. And I see a couple of our own clients in the audience, which I'm glad to see. But literally hundreds of rands a month to administer. It's not thousands, it's not tens of thousands, it's not hundreds of thousands. We are talking about literally hundreds of rands a month that you are attaching to have these commercial structures properly administered to receive one big benefit. That if something goes bad, I want to take away my house and my cars and every other asset that I've worked so hard to accumulate, including my policies and investments, I have actually cast this structure into the fora of my assets, paid a little money to administer them, and legally secure them. There's nothing else on the law. What would be the cost now if something does go wrong and everything is now vulnerable and taken away from us? How much would we now pay to protect it? It's amazing that now we become, obviously, penny foolish and very penny-wise, but very pound foolish. Because at the end of the day, you are talking about a situation of paying such little money to apply the only legal structure to separate assets from ourselves. Having that peace of mind and being able to go to practice and see numerous amount of clients, but something's going to go wrong somewhere. And what I've worked hard up until then, I've separated from myself and my practice. Come on, man. For that little cost, it surely must be the right route to go when it's dealing with practitioners and setting aside their hard assets from those practices. So that's the main objective. Everything else is a benefit. An add-on benefit. A value for as long as they're there. But this will stand the test. It's a legal structure for the security of wealth, and that's the bottom line. The next one is all the death benefits. Now, as practitioners and business owners, there's a huge amount of media about what is really going to cost when a successful business owner or practitioner dies. And there's many costs. We're going to summarize them quickly. And at the end, you're going to come to this percentage that's in your notes, that we've got to accept the fact that if we don't have legal structure attached to us, incorporating companies and trusts, we've got to be satisfied as business owners and practitioners that when we die, we will lose plus minus a third of everything we have when we die. Now that's a big amount. A third. That's why successful practitioners and business owners die insolvent. Not that they're literally insolvent, is that they can have all these assets, but not a third of those assets are in cash. And when it's time now to pay this plus minus 1/3 of costs and taxes on death, I'm going to have to liquidate a hell of a lot of assets to come up with that percentage. And we remember when we look at the cost of benefit exercise, we're talking about hundreds of rands a month to administer legal structures versus not applying them to ourselves and assets for the benefit of families, that they get it all instead of only about 2/3 of the stuff. Costing them millions versus a very absorbable monthly cost to set aside this huge amount of costs and taxes. Surely there is a cost to very big benefit on the death benefits alone. First one that stands out, which is becoming such a huge talk in the media, is capital gains tax. People think, and I don't know if capital gains tax is nothing but a tax that was introduced in 2001, and it's seen as a selling tax, that when I'm accumulating assets and I'm selling them at a gain, at a profit, I'm going to pay capital gains tax, CGT. Now in this particular instance, we all think that whilst we're alive when we're selling assets, a particular percentage is going to be obviously sacrificed to pay our CGT. But the biggest capital gains tax payment you're going to make is when you die. It's such a cruel taxation that when I die, I've almost deemed to have sold, almost deemed to have disposed my assets to my estate, to my heirs. And every single asset that I've accumulated during my lifetime has to be valued, see what they've grown by, and I'm going to sacrifice a huge percentage of that growth just because I've died. I haven't sold it, I've just died. But it's triggered the so-called selling tax. Now look at the situation. When you start a business or a practice, what is the value of that practice when you start? 100 Rand. Do you agree? Any business is zero when it starts. When I die, I have this business now worth how much? A few million. And how do you value a business? And including a medical practice. You've got to take that in NAV, the net asset value of that business. You're talking about stock, assets, book debt, machinery, retained income. And then you've got to add a particular value to goodwill. And the worst part for medical and legal and accounting practices, how much is a legal practice worth when the main member dies? Okay? 1 month, 1 day after death, what is your practice worth? Valueless. Maybe I've got partners and it can continue, but in most practices, the value disappears. But the worst part is that I've still got to create this 1 or 2 years of profits that I've made at the time of my death, together with all the assets, and that's still the value of my business when I die. All these costs and taxes are triggered, but the benefit is not passed to my families. They're not taking on these practices, it's valueless. But I still got to pay the plus minus 1/3 of those practice values. It's what it was worth at the time of my death, not what it becomes after my death. So the worst part about practices is that they've got quite an intense value, especially goodwill, because we're successful in the monies we make and our profits. That's taken into account all these costs and taxes. But it's worthless for our family thereafter. But they've still got to sacrifice a huge amount of personal assets to cover the plus minus 1/3 of the value of this practice when I die. Absolutely ridiculous position to be in. So if I've got a practice, when I take all those factors into account, plus 1 or 2 years of profits, let's say it's worth about 4 million. The CGT rate now, according to the latest, which will go up after this year's budget, is that it's a simple percentage of 40%, and if you're still a sole proprietor, of your personal tax rate. And so your fixed CGT rate, especially when you die, is 16.4%. So I die, and about 16.4% of my practice value in CGT is paid, but also 16.4% of all my other assets. I bought these properties at hundreds of thousands of rands, they're worth millions when I die, 16.4%. I bought these investments at a certain value, whatever they're worth when I die, 16.4% of that. So I haven't really sold these assets, I haven't sold my practice, but I've died with them. And every asset that I die with, except removables, has grown, and I'm going to sacrifice quite a big percentage in CGT just because I've died. Now that is just ludicrous. Next one is estate duties. Why they become so popular, these commercial structures and incorporating trust, is that we all know that when we die, it's very popular out there that boedelbelasting and estate duties is going to be levied. And the people that are going to pay enormous estate duties, death taxes, is obviously the people that have these potential values, which are business owners and self-employed professionals. And what makes this value so high is because of how you calculate what is the value of a goodwill in your estate when you die, involving your practices and your business. Because the first thing you've got to take into account is this ridiculous value to your practice. That's what it's worth at the time of your death, although very little after your death. You've got to take things like life policies, deemed assets, things that are created because of your death, all these life policy proceeds, and you all know what life policies are, all 2, 3, 4, 5 million rand a pop. You've got to add the value of your assets, all your properties, your investments, vehicles, movables, everything is added. Now fortunately for estate duties, unlike capital gains tax, you can take the debt off. What I owe my credit card, what I owe my car, my bond. And then the law says that for now, which is a potential increase next year, is that I have to then take a 3.5 million rand abatement off that net figure. So it's all my assets, less my debt, less 3.5 million rand. And then whatever's left, I've got to lose 20% to estate duties. Now, let me tell you, 3.5 million rand, with all due respect, especially when it comes to medical practitioners and self-employed professional business owners, is nothing. 3.5 million rand gets sucked up by a little bit of life cover, a small medical practice, and now suddenly you're losing 20% of your net assets to estate duties alone. So when we look at CGT alone, and that percentage of 16.4, and I look at estate duties, and that percentage, even if I ignore the 3.5 million rand abatement because it gets sucked up by things we forgot as a value, like a practice or policy, I'm not really, without even looking at all that cost and debt, how quick I get to the plus minus 1/3. I'm talking about a multi-million rand payment that is paid, and unfortunately, these costs and taxes are paid in cash. Do you know how much you have to liquidate in assets and practices and businesses to come up with 1/3 of the liquid value of those assets and businesses? You're probably going to have to auction a hell of a lot more than 1/3 of the value of the assets. And that is why so little is passed on to the second and the third generation when people successfully die. Because by the time the second generation gets it, it's already been sucked up by all the death, cost and taxations. Just a little thing called executive fees. You all know that. An executive is somebody that runs up your estate when you die. Can you imagine somebody getting 3.5% plus VAT, 4% of your gross estate? So you can be worth 20 million, policies, properties, practice, and you can have 10 million rand debt. It doesn't matter about the debt. This executor, to one of your estates, is going to get 4% of the gross value, not the net. Your heirs, your family gets the net. So what's 4% of net assets? It's probably 5, 10, 15% of your net assets. So somebody to do an administration job, a 20, 30, 40,000 rand job, is getting 5, 10, 15% of your net assets. And some people you don't know as an heir. You've actually nominated someone you don't know to do a job as an heir. It's a crazy situation that you're entitled to have a percentage of someone's success just because you have died and now you've got to do an administration job. That's ludicrous. I'd rather have legal structures. I have everything in these structures, but I don't have a choice because I'm either going to have it all exposed and everything disappearing when something goes wrong in my practice or business, or everything's secured. The bonus is when I die with nothing. Nothing in my personal name. It's all in these legal structures. My family takes over them. So when an executor comes along, he's going to get 4% of what's in my name. Nothing. Much better. Much better. It's amazing how the right thing evolves. He gets 4% of maybe what's very little outside of my structures. That's going to be very little. He's going to charge a fee to do a very small administration job because there's very little to administer. I'd rather have that situation. 4% executive fees on my gross estate, 16.4% CGT on my gross estate, 20% estate in my net asset. And when I add up all the other costs of death, conveyances to transfer properties, there's a thing called security transfer taxes where they take 0.25% of the value of my businesses, just in stamp duties and my investments. When I add up everything, you will be fortunate if only about a third is lost. Come on. I don't have a choice to secure assets under the only structure I have available in law. Let us have a situation that everything flows on death, not some. And what's the bonus about this legal structure incorporating trust is that when I die, and as generations are dying, they're taking over these legal structures. They're getting wealthier and wealthier because they're taking over everything entrenched and they're adding to it and getting bigger instead of by the time my children or grandchildren get it, there will be nothing left. This is a good example. How many of you have inherited? Have you guys inherited millions? Anyone inherited millions? But so many generations of people have died. What has happened to all those assets that they had? Well, everyone died zero. They died, they could dissolve and cost of death. Something went wrong and they inherited a little bit, so they lost it because they got divorced or sued. And then the next person died with some of those assets. And by the time you get it as the grandchildren of all those people that have died before you, it's gone. So you inherited nothing. I think it's now time to create a legacy. Create these legal structures and let people start taking over these structures. And people just become wealthier and bigger and bigger. And when I say protection, imagine a situation that I die and now I've got this, even if it's maybe only 2/3 of my assets. And now 2 children inherit your stuff. Half goes to the one child who gets into a business that goes bad, there goes the inheritance. Another one goes through a divorce, there goes the inheritance. See, so this protection structures is not only for you, it's about the people that take over them. So when my children take over them, these assets are secured from them and their business problems, and their financial problems, and their divorces. You're creating a structure that not only for you, but for your spouses, your children, and your grandchildren, and whoever you want to inherit, because they've given you great satisfaction during your lifetime, like your mistresses. Those people deserve these assets to be protected from them. And that's what it's all about. We need security of wealth. That's the only way we can achieve it. Next one is, you know that minor children can't inherit. We all got children and grandchildren, and we die. So we're happy to accept to lose millions, close to, or if not more than 1/3 of assets, and our practice has been shut down in businesses. And whatever is left, if a person is under the 18, you know they can't inherit anymore. So I've got children or grandchildren, whatever is left, the little, goes into a fund of the government called the Guardian's Fund. Then people under the age of 18 can't inherit. And we all got children and grandchildren. It goes into a fund of the government. And there's many problems when my inheritances go into government funds, aren't there? What are the problems? Oh, I've got many. It's administered by government officials. Jeepers, I don't have to go any further. Next, it's only earning a pathetic interest rate. So what are those monies worth by the time they get to 18? It can't hold assets, only cash. So all good assets like properties and investments that should be growing when they become wealthier, it's actually regressing. But the worst part, they can't touch those monies until they're 18. So who's going to pay for their education and their well-being and their financial and medical needs? You've died successful, but you've made your children and grandchildren completely indigent. They can't touch anything, and they're completely dependent on other people. Because my children can only inherit via trust. So it's an inheritance structure. Especially also for people that can't inherit like mine. That's what it's about. But the big thing is that when you've got a complex estate, see, when you are your staff and they've got a simple estate or some assets, and they've got one thing called some assets and pays you one tax rate to be attached to them, life is easy. And to wind up that estate and buddle when you die, it's easy. It takes months. How long do you think it takes to wind up a business owner, a self-employed professional when they die, to wind up their estate and their buddle? When you're talking about the practices, the codes, the leases, the staff, why does it take so long? Because you've got to wind up everything attached to that practice and the person's life and all these assets and investments. How long do you think it takes to wind up a medical practitioner? Minimum 3 years. Minimum 3 to 5 years. Now in that period, do you agree that everything is frozen? You can't touch anything as your heirs. Now I've got these people that are dependent on me. Parents, siblings, kids, grandkids, spouses. They can't wait 3 to 5 years before they can get to money. Have you ever got to work and you forgot your wallet in your purse at home? You couldn't even buy Coke. It was a long day. Cheapest for my wife. 1 hour was suicidal. She has access to money every day at the end of the day. Can you imagine 3 to 5 years? You can't have a situation when you've got people around you that you can just blasé accept, head in the sand stuff, that when I die it's cool to sacrifice these practices and businesses, lose a big chunk of my assets, and they can wait 3 to 5 years before they can get to it. Oh, we've got a responsibility to the people around us, including our staff, people's lives, their careers. You need continuity. That's what this word is. Things must carry on. Our staff, their jobs, the right to make income, the assets entrenched, the investments entrenched, being entitled to that. Why should everything be absolved? Because a key person called the practitioner died. This is a continuity structure. I'm either going to die with assets and businesses in my name, and most of them are going to be absolved, and you're going to destroy many people's lives, whether the people that attach to you, including family and staff, versus a structure that continues. There's nothing else in our law. I'd rather take B, thank you. Let everything continue. Nothing's part of that estate. It's all about the right succession plan that is very different when it comes to business owners and practitioners. You see, a succession plan for a normal individual, which is like an employee, is very easy. I must have a super duper last will and testament. Assets on my name. And that's okay. There's going to be maybe some death costs, and they might take some time before they get to the assets, be months, and they might sacrifice a small percentage of assets. But for ourselves, as practitioners and self-employed professional business owners, very different. We need these trust and commercial structures. Everything within it, so that we don't use more than a third of those wealths. We have them in there so that our businesses, practices, and our assets will continue, not come to an end. And it's also a situation that they don't have to wait years before they can get to something very small at the end of the time period. So it's all about structures. Everything in these commercial trust structures I'm going to summarize for you that is ideal and the only structure for medical practitioners. And still having a will. It's called a pouring over will. It becomes a very pathetic will. If everything is in my trust and commercial structures, I must still have a will, because there's always something out in my name, hopefully very little. And all that is pouring over will is saying I'm going to leave to the trust what I didn't put into it whilst I was alive. So that everything is trust owned and commercially structured owned when I die. And then the families and the people take over these structures. So it's all about these trusts and commercial structures. Everything in here, everything you buy in the future is in there, not in your personal names. I have a pouring over will. And the third and final thing for practitioners and business owners to complete your succession plan is to have a letter of wishes. And what is that letter of wishes? It's the guidelines, what must happen to certain assets and monies when I die. You know, when you said in your will, I want to leave my car to my brother, I want to leave 100,000 rand to this person. You can't do it there now. You'll do it through the letter of wishes of you as the founder of this trust. Same thing, just to cause these monies and assets to go to certain people, especially when you die. So it's all about now, pouring over will, everything in these commercial structures and trust. And every year, once a year, I'm updating my letters of wishes of what I want to happen to certain monies and assets to go to certain people, especially when I die. Like there's a very popular letter of wish for the doctors and the medical professional business owners. And here's one of them. When I write part of this letter of wish is to distribute 500,000 rand from this trust to my maid for good service. You just got to define good service, otherwise you're supposed to be offended. But yes, 500,000 rand to my maid for good service. You see, and the update those wishes every year. So a succession plan for practitioner business owners is all about these commercial and trust structures, assets within it, the pouring over will, and updating my letter of wishes once every year. And surely that must be the right structure to evolve for literally hundreds of rands a month to administer and manage, just to acquire this death benefit for the people that stays behind. Never mind protecting of all wealth against all forms of risk, peace of mind, the stuff I've worked hard for is always going to be there. That not somebody is going to take it away from me and I go down to zero. How long does a judgment last nowadays? You get sued, a claim can go there, you lose all your assets. And how long do judgments stand in your name now, as of last year? 30 years. Let me tell you when something goes bad in your practice. You lose everything. You have judgments and all these claims for 30 years. You will never accumulate wealth again in this country. You're gone forever. You can't even get a cell phone account. You'll never build wealth. Out of practice, can't make money, have no assets, judgments for 30 years. I can't even get a bank account. Right? Suddenly a few hundred rand a month for these structures is very cheap versus that problem. Come on, it's got to be an easy decision. So, I'm attaching these trusts and commercial structures for acquiring the security of wealth and assets. I have this wonderful succession estate plan for practitioners. But then, obviously, I'm going to put out tax attorneys, advocates, that's on now. What is the right structures to be attached to me and my assets, my properties, my investments, and especially my practice, to obviously absorb the most tax efficiencies that I can achieve for when I make money out of my practices and when my assets are making me money, that on both I'm maximizing my net tax effect. And then we've done well. So it's all about tax efficiencies, maximizing my tax reward, which we're going to cover, taking into account my death plan and security of wealth. Obviously, asset protection is the key here. And everyone thinks that by attaching maybe some commercial structures like trusts for my assets and attaching companies and corporations and limited liabilities to my practice, that maybe I'm going to be worse off from a tax point of view. I'm going to go through it, and as we're showing what structure should have, highlight just a few tax efficiency structures around them, and it will make the logical conclusion that you can't deliberate otherwise. How many people are still sole proprietors and not Incs or personal liability companies? Anyone that's sole props? And see, I can tell you the other half not putting their hand up because they're going to be very embarrassed. Why is this huge trend in the medical and dental fraternity of going through the so-called incorporation management company structure? And it's obviously, I'm so glad to see certain doctors that we've structured and achieving it and seeing those net rewards. I hope you're going to be in the same position. You agree with me that for all those reasons, including tax planning, we've got to attach ourselves to it. Now let's look at it. First thing is that the reason to incorporate, which is in terms of how many companies have, or being attached to a personal liability company, and the reason to have management companies, I'll tell you what I'm talking about now when we get to this slide, and the reason to have our assets attached to another set of commercial structures called trusts for our assets, is to achieve all these benefits. One, I need to have limited liability. The separation of risk, debts, claims that I can't control, that you're not infallible. Don't think it can never happen to you. That nothing is lost. I want continuity. That when people die, everything carries on. When something goes wrong in my business, it carries on. Everything inside the same as the assets. We need to protect our personal and our business assets from the risk of the practice. You need to know, it sounds ludicrous, maybe too good to be true, that everything I have in this business and practice, the infrastructure, and everything that I have personally cannot be touched by nobody. If I can have that type of security against all forms of risk, I've done well. So that when things do go bad, financial problems, personal problems, we hate talking about it, divorce. What's the quickest way to destroy your assets in your practice? An acronym is divorce. Separations, personal claims, divorces, vagaries of business, things happen, life happens. Let's make sure that those risks around me causes everything just to continue. But the big thing is that we're going to talk about dividends, profits, that when I work hard, I need to make money. We're going to learn about how much I must earn in salary as a maximum, how much I will declare in profits in the practice, and how much will flow to my management company in dividends and profits to maximize tax efficiency, but more important, that the monies aren't coming to me, because when they're coming to me, I'm owning it. And when I buy assets with it and investments, it's owned by me. That I will stop making the money. It must be flowing into my commercial structures, my trust boxes, tax efficiently. And then when I have it and I'm building assets and investments in it, nobody can touch it. The flows of my monies must not be coming to me. The flows must be correct, which we're going to cover just now, to go into these structures and secure wealth. Tax efficiently, no one can touch it, not part of my estate when I die. Met the objectives, costing hundreds of rands to achieve it, happy days. The flows must be right. Accumulation of assets in the right structures, everything being able to continue. Liability protection from all forms of risk. Insolvency protection. Something goes wrong with my business or practice. Imagine, doctors happens all the time. Something goes wrong with my practice, but they're involved in another business. That business goes down with it because it's in their name. Or that business goes down and pulls down their practice because they got involved in something. What about having everything compartmentalized? That when something goes bad, like my property venture there, or another sideline business, or my practice, that thing alone goes down. It doesn't affect all my other entities. It doesn't affect my other structures and businesses and properties and assets. I have to have that when something goes bad, it goes on its own, that there's not this massive domino effect affecting business assets, personal assets, and any other business I'm attached to. It's all about compartmentalization, risk mitigation, insolvency protection. Have the right structures I've covered, that because I'm attached to these legal structures, that I have this death benefits. Come on. Everything must continue. We can't use plus minus a third of our wealth. Everything just carries on. That the costs and taxations are set aside. But more importantly, yes, you can't deliberate personal tax percentages and the personal taxes that we are attached to versus corporate taxes and entity taxations and their rates of how you can absorb them. There is no doubt that I'm going to maximize and optimize my tax efficiencies. I'll get all these debt benefits entrenched. All the insolvencies and liabilities that I could have is secured, and I have this thing that the right entities are making money, not me. But more importantly, look at this beautiful thing. You can't believe nowadays how everybody is flying into corporations, personal liability company. What was just passed in law? In law, there's this thing called small business corporation taxes. If you are an Inc., a personal liability company, as of now, this is awesome. That's why this thing is going to be flowing through the medical fraternity. That if I'm rather a company, an incorporation, a personal liability company, the law says now that the first 75,000 rand of profits, zero tax. From 75,000 to 365,000, 7%. From 365,000 to 550,000, 14%. And then whatever I make over the 550,000 rand mark, then I'm back to my 28% of my corporate taxes. What are you? No? Make a decent amount of money. What are you? 41% from cent one. Just if they didn't have the small business corporation that has now just been applied to personal liability companies, incorporations like me and you would still be better off to have an incorporation and paying 28% company tax versus what's your personal tax rate for you in your practice? Sliding scale after 75,000 rand, 18% to 41. You're quick to get to the 41. How can we deliberate, just looking at corporate tax rates of me as a person, that I pay nothing up to 75,000 rand and a sliding scale from 18 but get to 41 is very quick. 41 versus 28%. Now look at this bonus. We're going to show you what you should earn as a limited salary in your Inc. We've got a huge deduction in your salary, but very little pays you earn. The first 550,000 rand in profits after my little salary, I've got this new sliding scale in terms of this Article 12 that is now attached in terms of our Tax Administration Act for small business corporation attached to now incorporations. That instead of paying 28% on the first 550, it's a sliding scale, and immediately you save just over 100,000 rand a year. Just on that alone. I want to maximize what's available. When I'm a sole proprietor in the mine, I can't earn a little salary, part of my profits. I want a small salary where I pay little tax on that, but a big deduction against the profits. The next 550,000 in profits, I've got a small business corporation taxes, where I've got the sliding scale saving again. And then whatever I make above the 550,000 mark, I've still got a very favourable tax rate attached to my use, which is 28%. And when I take a combination which we're going to cover very carefully, my limited salary, my small business corporation for the 550 my practice, and the rest of the profits flowing to my management company and hitting the 28% on the balance, I have done very well. Massive amount of tax efficiencies for hundreds of rands a month of administration. Yes?
Please, can I ask you this?
Yeah.
The sliding scale for
Yeah.
a small business
Corporation.
has it not been taken away that you now tax 28%
No.
from the start?
No, that's what's been entrenched now with these new articles. It's now entrenched. There's many conditions. One, you can't have a turnover of more than 20 million rand a year. Anybody earning more than 20 million rand a year? Geez, if you're earning that kind of money, you don't worry about taxes. You'll have to be paid. Most of us will not be making more than 20 million rand a year. And then your sliding scale, then another one is that you can't have more than one business or company in your personal name. You will see that the only thing in your personal name is your incorporation, because you have to in terms of law. But all the other companies and stuff is trust owned. So I still only have one in my name. And then I can apply the sliding scale for small business corporation. So you've got to comply with those conditions, and you've got your SPC available. And that's just been entrenched in our Tax Administration Act, which was available to certain criteria in business owners, but now available to practitioners, provided you meet those two criteria. What a pleasure. It's just been entrenched. Beautiful. Cover that now. So, it's all about the right structure to suck up the SPC, limited salary, tax efficiencies, and all the other benefits. These are the reasons for this legal structure. Agreed? But let's look at a trust-owned business versus your own business. And that's a quick summary. Then I want to climb into the structure and while we're here. Okay, quickly, let's get through the slide. And then the next two slides, it will all make sense. You have different trusts for different purposes. All we have covered up until now, I want you to picture, I've got a personal trust for personal assets, but now I've got this business in practice. And most businesses in practice are what? Personally owned. Now that's not good, because you've got a personally owned business. Firstly, that's probably one of the highest valued assets you have. Looking at all those profits per year, the assets in that business, it's worth millions. It's part of my goodwill. It's part of my estate. And when I look at all those costs, the CGT, state duties, all those costs on there, it's a huge chunk that is now lost in value on death. So I've got massive costs on death. It doesn't continue. But the biggest problem, that if your business or practice is not trust-owned, who makes the money? Who makes the money? And this is the key. You. Do you agree? I'm the owner. I'm the director, I'm the sole proprietor, I'm the buyer. So if you make 2 million rand a year, who does the 2 million rand go to? To you, do you agree? Now you can have all the trusts and all the other structures in your personal life. You can't just throw money away. Eh? Can you just, if I make 2 million, 3 million a year, can I just put it into my trust? Can I put it into my structures? Can I give it away? I can't. Because how much can you donate per year? 100,000 rand a year. That's it. So the problem is that if my businesses, and this is the key, is not trust owned, all the money I make comes to me. And then I can only donate 100,000 rand a year. So by the time you're worth 20 million, if you wanted to put those assets and money somewhere else, only maybe 1 million of that will be in those other entities' names. You still own the rest. Because you've made the money, you can only donate 100,000 rand a year. Does that make sense? Now look at the situation. If my trusts, let's cover now a trust owning my assets. We'll cover that now. Let's call it family trusts, because everyone has heard the word family trust, but it's actually personal asset trust. My personal asset trust owning my assets. The key is to get a trust to also own my businesses. And for the main fact that ignore death and everything else, so that every time I make money, I make 1 million a day, I make 1 million a year. Mustn't come to me. Must go straight to these trusts, because then I protect everything. I must be able to protect everything, not 100,000 rand a year. So if you get sued, you will protect a small percentage of assets. I want all of it protected. And the only way I can do that is via this trust of mine, that owns my assets also own my practice, so that the whole money that I make in the future is protected. That's the key. That the flow of monies, this is the key. That when I'm making money, how must I make it? It must be going directly to my commercial trust structures, so I can protect it all and die with nothing. That's the key. The key is that businesses and assets are not owned by me, they're owned by these trusts, so that I protect everything, and no matter how much I make, I can protect it all, not a very small percentage. There are doctors out there that think they've got protection. They've got some trusts, and they've got some assets in trusts, and some in other people's names, but the practices and where they make money is theirs. So they're still going to own 80-90% of the assets, because they can only give a little bit. Even if you put it to these other people and entities, it owes you. It only comes to creative, so it's still yours. You haven't stopped making the money, and therefore everything is still exposed. So the key is to do that. But the problem is, you can't think about the logic. I've got my trust, which we're going to cover now, owning all my assets. My assets, my cars, my properties, my investments, my life policies, everything. Because you want to protect it all. I can't use that trust to now own my business. Because can you sue the owner of a business? Yes. So imagine, so this is the oxymoron, this is the problem out there. I need my trust, my assets, where it is, to own my business, because that causes everything to be protected, everything can go in there, including all the future money, no matter how much I make. But if I get it to own my businesses, and gets attached to what makes me money, I put it at risk. Because now they can sue it, because now it's the owner. And that's why it's so important that we talk about two types of class trusts. This one is called in Afrikaans, which we've always termed it for many years, a besigheidstrust, or in English, a share trust. The share trust's job is to own the high-risk stuff, the businesses, the begunstigde, the beneficiary. And one of the beneficiaries is my family trust. So in other words, as I'm making money from our businesses, it's going to the share trust and then into the beneficiary in the family trust where my assets are. It's like a double move. It's like a conduit. The one that owns the businesses and money go through the share trust to the family trust, through the share trust to the family trust. But the key is that if something goes wrong with my business, when they sue the two people, which is who? You're going to be sued. But where's all your assets? In my personal trust. When they go to the owner, the shareholder, they're going to sue the share trust. But what's in the share trust? Nothing but the company's bad shares. So you've created that dividing line. You see, the share trust is the key to everything. It owns what makes me the money. It owns the risk, the businesses. Yeah? It causes everything to flow to my personal trust so I can protect everything. But it's the one that takes a hit on its own with just those bad companies if something goes wrong. It's this compartmentalization. One trust for assets, one trust for businesses, and I can flow the money through the business one into the family one to protect everything. I'm going to show you this now. When I've got the pictures on, it will make sense. So the key, an existing structure now is you or you and your partners owning your practice. That is the worst, because I'm making the money, I can't protect anything, I will die with it and all assets, and I've definitely got the worst tax person from making money and invest from an income perspective being you personally. I want to have these two things. The next slide will give it. I want all my personal assets protected from my business. And then I'm also going to swing it. I also want to protect the business from me and my partners. There must be nothing worse. Building a nice practice in business and that's at risk to my partners and other problems. I have to have a double-edged sword. Protect everything I have and in the future, and also protect the business from me. If I can achieve it because of these two different class trusts, I've done very well. So this is the picture. There we go. So that's the objective. The picture is this. Very simple. We need to have a legal structure for our practice. I'm either going to be a sole proprietorship or partnership with myself or my partners, or I'm going to be an incorporation, which is now called a personal liability company. And I am the shareholder and director, or I and my partners are the shareholders and directors. In law, do you agree? For doctors and lawyers, with only two professions left, where we can operate in these personal liability companies, Incs, but we have to be the shareholder and director. Do you agree? So there we are. What's nice about that? I will then earn a limited salary. We call it anything between 20 and 30,000 rand. And when we look at the sliding scale, you're going to pay very little pay as you earn, but you've got this wonderful 440 to just over 350,000 rand as a deduction, an expense against your profits. So you're pulling out this 300,000-400,000 rand a year, but very limited from a tax planning point of view, from a pay-as-you-earn. So I've got pay-as-you-earn, limited, nice big deduction being my salary against my profits. Good? So I'm an employee of it, earning a limited salary. Then, for the next 550,000 rand of profits, I am going to suck up the small business corporation taxes and save just over another 100,000 rand. So what I'm earning personally is a limited salary, and I'm sucking up the small business corporation taxes in there. That's easy. Here comes the next step. Now, what's nice about our rules, medical and legal rules, are you entitled to have a management company? In other words, we call it the ManCo. I can have a management company where I am the director, but I'm not the shareholder. The shareholder is going to be my share trust. If I've got partners, well then all our share trusts are the partners. So in other words, my business share trust owns my management company 100%, and I'm the director. Now the law says that I can, every month, every year, every day, whenever I'm making money out of this management company, I can pass it through to my management company as a management fee. So let's look at a practical example. This month, in my little salary, and I'm sucking a little bit towards my small business corporation, but let's have 150,000 in profits in there. I can move that 150,000 in profits out of my practice, out of my ink, into my management company. So this practice is not making profit other than a limited profit for that small business corporation. The profits are landing up in my management company. Now, what's the tax rate when you're making profits in a company? What's the corporate tax rate? 28%. Do you agree? Right. So I've paid the 28. Then, to get the money out to my trust so that I can spend it, so I can buy assets with it, right? I'll pass the dividend. So when the money goes from my practice, it sounds terrible. You've got to do 3 transfers. I'm sure you'll find the time to do 3 internet transfers. My profits, whoop, into my management company bank account. I will then keep a percentage here. We call it the plus minus 1/3 to cover company and dividend tax. The other 2/3 into my share trust and into my family trust, and then from there I can spend as I please. So this money is flowing from my practice to my management company. 2/3 of this money I want it into my share trust, and then from there into my family trust bank account, and then I can spend and buy as I please. But what I've caused through the movement of money is that I've sucked up my limited salary, my small business corporation, and I'm using now corporate tax rates against my profits. And then the bonus is that I don't earn it, it lands up in my family trust. And from there, I spend. And it's amazing when we work with practitioners, it looks so overwhelming. You think, my gosh. And when you talk about the medical fraternity, you look at this and you're thinking, you've got to be kidding me. It looks horrifying. It's not. You just have to do it for 1 or 2 months. It's so easy. Whatever's left in my practice, once I've paid all my bills, if I want to get it out, it's very simple. Push what's in that account into my management company. From there, push 2/3. Besigheidstrust, family trust. So if I've made 150,000 rand, 100,000 rand is gone into my share trust, family trust, and there's my 100,000 rand in the bank account of my family trust, and then I can do what I want. Right? It's 3 transfers. And then everything else is done by the trust administrators and accountants, and then you have built your wealth for your trust. You're untouchable assets wise. You die with nothing. And it's all about 3 things. An incorporation to run my practice through. It is this management company to suck up my profits, and then doing 2 transfers of those profits to my business and family trust. And if it looks overwhelming, get over it. You're very intelligent people, for goodness sakes. To understand that flow and do it once or twice over a month or 2, it is done. and now I've secured all wealth, died with nothing, and everything carries on despite deaths. Any questions on the structure? Inc., Manco, Business Trust. Is it that overwhelming? How much does it cost to set up something like that? Thousands. What does it cost to run it? Hundreds of rands a month, which is tax deductible anyway against the practice. It's minuscule to run. Yes, sir.
How does that, for example, pay your bond on your house?
That's a good question. So imagine, do you agree that the top piece here is that there's my family trust? Okay? So imagine, I've got all my assets in my trust, and I've got my house in there. Do you agree? I've got my house in there, I've got all my policies, my investments, everything is in my personal trust. Where's all the money going? In the personal trust. So all the monies are in there to pay for the bond, water, lights, minor wants, credit cards, the way she spends sometimes, not all of it. But I mean, it settles as much as it can. So what happens is that the monies are not landing in your account. You're not making money anymore. You're making a little bit of savings that you can use towards expenses and spending. But the majority of your money is landing up where? In your personal trust. So, or, let's use a practical example. Do you agree that when I've made the money, it's landed up in my family trust? There's my 200,000. It's paying the bond. The dividend is coming off my family trust bank account, isn't it? It's paying for the policies and the dividends. From there, you're paying school fees and expenses. When you're spending on your credit cards, you're transferring it and setting your credit cards every month. Everything is landing up in the family trust, paying for the expense of the assets in there and your personal expenses. Because it's making the money. Your trust is making the money to pay for the bonds and all that. You're not making the money. You're making a little bit. The majority is landing up in my trust to pay for those things. That's the key. You've got to stop making the money. The asset must be in that trust and the money must land up in there. And then it pays for it. And until I get that right, you've got nothing. That's the reason. Yes, sir. Yeah.
The tax basically suggested having registered as Inc.
Yeah.
How do you register the Manco?
PDY Limited. Okay, so your Manco is a PDY Limited. Then I'm the director. Okay. Sole director. And if you don't have a partner, yes. And your share trust will be the sole shareholder. So, I'm the director of both. I'm the shareholder of the Inc. 100%, but my share trust is the sole shareholder of my management company, the PDY Limited.
Next question.
Yeah.
Regarding the bond,
Yeah.
what happens if your primary residence
Yes.
is currently in your personal name?
Yeah. You see, we can't cover everything. I can't leave it all. How do I get it in?
Now, so how do you get it into the
How do you get it into the trust?
Say so personal.
Okay, so let me give you this. Can you imagine the worst possible situation? Huh? I'm a doctor. Okay, I'm doing very well. Let's say you've got a 4 million rand house. Sorry. You've got a 9 million rand house. Otherwise, you're not doing. So at the end of the day, you've got a 9-bar house. Can you imagine trying to get this house, 9 million rand, out of your name into the trust to protect it? Now, there's a number of problems. What are you going to pay? Transfer duties. Bang! Hundreds of thousands of rands. If it's grown by more than 2 million rand, what are you going to pay also? Capital gains tax. Then you've got conveyancing fees, bond cancellation fees, early bond cancellation fees, bond registration fees to register in the bond. And then the worst part is that when I sell it, because it's not in my name, it's in my trust, I'm going to pay more capital gains tax. Because the law says that if my house is in my name and I sell it one day, I have the first 2 million rand is available in gain as my prime residence gain, not to pay capital gains tax on it. So I'm going to pay a fortune to get it in, which is unaffordable to agree, and then I pay more when I die. Sorry, I pay more when I sell. So now look at this situation. And that's why you've got to do this as quickly as possible. There's all these special type of transfers. You've got to trust. We apply what we call the usufruct usus bedminimum transfer. Our internal conveyancers will do this. In other words, we make you the user of the property and we move the ownership to the trust. The end result will be this. Like this situation. I'll summarize it. 1, no transfer duties. 2, no capital gains tax. You'll pay a little bit of conveyancing fees. So if you've got a 500 rand house, you're not going to pay 500,000-600,000 rand. You might pay 40,000 rand. Number 2, when you sell it, you do not lose your prime residence exemption. that 2 million rand prime residence exemption can be sucked up into your use of front right. So, the end result is this, in 1 minute summary. Imagine that there's a legal structure available to get your properties into the trust without these horrendous transfer duties and CGT. Limited costs, conveyancing fees, thousands of rands, affordable, and not paying more when you sell. Can you imagine that situation? You're going to move your house in. Okay. These things are available in our law. Getting assets trust owned without these horrendous costs and taxations. Getting the flows of money right for your practice, tax efficiently, and building the monies in the trusts. And as a result, there's solutions in law to protect the assets, get them in at very palatable cost. And you've just hit the big one. So many people turn around, they haven't moved the house, it's unaffordable. Can you imagine? I can move it in. My assets at no cost. A very small percentage. You don't have percentage for your property. We need 2 state aid evaluations. I want you to say 2 state aid evaluations. We have to use the higher of the 2. And then about 1% of that value to get your house in. That's worth it. Damn it. That's thousands of rands and I've protected my home. Got massive debt benefit for being there and I'm not worse off when I sell it. Give me one reason not to do so. There's no reason. You move it ASAP. There are these things that we need to absorb. And commercial structuring and tourism, organisation like us, that's what we do. Our job is to create the right structure and get the stuff in at very palatable cost every day. Taking many factors into account, including tax. That's what we're doing. Yes, sir?
So, the Inc., the company,
Yeah, that you trade your practice through.
does it sit alone or is it owned by
It sits alone owned by you. You have to law. Remember, the medical and legal rules is that the practice, whether it's in your name or Inc., must be owned by the practitioner. But that's okay. Because remember, it's making the money, but it's not making the profits home. Here's your 500,000 rand turnover, paying all the expenses, your staff, everything. But the net profit, where's that going? This thing is zero. It's making nil. Because all the profits every month is being pulled out. And then funds my trust to buy and spend. Makes sense? Right, let's look at the last picture here. Do you agree that once I have this, it seems overwhelming, but it's actually quite a simple structure. Okay? I've got the right structure for my practice. 2 blocks, Inc., Manco. I've got a couple of trusts, business, family, assets, holding my Manco. Now, I'm building assets, am I right? I am building assets now. I've made the money, some of it I'm spending, but the other money is now in my trust. Because you owning the assets, do you think you are the right taxpayer for earning money, rentals from properties, interest of monies in bank accounts, selling assets and making capital gain? Do you think you are the best taxpayer to earn investment income? I can tell you right now, you are the worst taxpayer. And on top of it, you dine with it to lose it when you die, and anyone can take away your investments and properties. So now look at this picture. I've got the right structure for my practice, but now I've got all my assets in a trust. So there's my family trust. Now, what investments do we have, for example? Money's in bank accounts. You've got a money market investment account, you're earning good money, and you're earning interest. How much can you earn in interest without paying tax? 23,800. If you have a 65, 34,500. But then you're basically losing 41% of your interest to tax. Do you agree? What happens if it's in the trust? The trust is earning the interest. If there's a property there, it's earning the rental income. And when it receives it, the law says, into the various sections of our Tax Act, that you can push this interest income. You can push, when you sell in unit trusts and investments, the capital gain. You can push the property's rentals to the beneficiaries. Now, who's the beneficiaries of your trust? You. If you're married, your spouse. You've got children, your children, grandchildren. You're looking after maybe your parents, and you need to help them now and then, your parents. All these people are beneficiaries of your trust. Do you agree? Do you know that you can register minor children? My 7, 12, and 50-year-old taxpayers underneath my family trust. Let's say you've earned 100,000 rand from your properties. I'm going to push 33,000 33,000 to child 1, 33,000 to child 2, 33,000 to child 3. But each person, the first 75,000 rand that they pay tax on, do you agree? So how much do my children pay on those 33? Nothing. If I earned the rental, what would I have lost? 41%. I've lost 40,000 rand versus 0. You are now, you know what trusts and commercial structures work? That when you're making the money, you can make use of all the taxpayers around you. You can make use of companies and its tax rates. You can make use of the trust and its tax rates. I can use the beneficiaries. Maybe my wife is not working. Eh? And now I earn some rental income. I say, wife, for the first time in 18 years of marriage, I finally see a reason for this marriage. I'm going to put this 100,000 rental income on your return because you've got a better rate than mine. You've got options. I've got spreading between people. Myself, people around me, my heirs, and entities. Do you know why these commercial structures give you tax planning? Because you can make use of all the different rates available to all taxpayers, individuals, companies, and trusts. Let me give you one little one. Sometimes part of your last one, otherwise I'll be here all day. Some part of my investment strategy, and I'm sure it's yours. When you're making money, what do you do with that money? You're earning money in interest, you're buying properties, rent, getting involved in investments, unit trust policies. When you look at all those type of investments, the trust is the best tax vehicle for it, except for listed shares. Now, if I've got listed shares, because you've got to have some listed shares, listed stock, you set it up in a company, I know your trust. Now look at this. Do you know that every time you earn dividends, you know how do you make money from your shares, your investments? When you're selling them, making a capital gain, and when you're earning dividends, you know that when they're making profits, they're passing it to you. But before they can pass it to you, what do they take? 15% dividend tax first, don't they? Then they give you the net. But if your shares are held in a company under your trust, how much do they take in dividend tax before they give it to you? 0. Because the law says when I declare dividends to another company that owns the shares, I don't withdraw and withhold the dividend tax. So I am earning 15% dividends, 15% more out of my dividends that I get out of my listed shares than you. In your name, you're getting 15% less. In my company trust, I'm earning 15% more dividends than you. I've got more to invest than you. And I'm reinvesting it. And then when I am selling it, I've got the right vehicle versus me for selling. See, every asset class and how you make it, you will look at all the monies that I can make from that asset class. What's the right box? Is it in a company owned by my trust, or is it in the trust directly? Listed stock, no doubt. REITs, real estate investment trusts, unit trust policies, directly in the trust. So all you need to do is that I just need to know that I've got these investments and assets, where is it owned, which trust, structure the practice right, like we speak, and run these entities to maximize when I'm making money on my practices and businesses, and when my assets are making me money, I'm also maximizing my tax efficiencies on investment income as well. Now I've done well. It's about the right entities to hold them, maximize the tax reward, and protect them. Very simple. So, plan and deliberate your structure. I mean, in your head, it's quite simple. I know what my practice structure should look like involving Inc and Manco. I've got a couple of trusts to own some assets and the rest of my businesses. Then I'm sitting with these trust commercial writers that holistically provide the whole thing from beginning to end. You're not just going to set them up. You're going to attach to their trust accounting division to administer it, their conveyancing division to get those assets in without those horrendous costs and taxations. Plan and deliberate. My structure will be different to yours. But you'll plan and deliberate with these good commercial trust tax structuring writers, law firms, accounting firms that do everything as a specialization to structure your practices, your businesses, and assets right. Taking many factors into account called tax and protection of assets. Once you've got the right structure, it's just a learning curve for a month or two how to operate them and how to flow the money. It's so simple. And now I've got the three main things. As business owners, practitioners, asset protection, continuity, setting aside this huge amount of debt costs. and maximizing my tax efficiencies for my practice and businesses and my investment income on my assets. And I've done well. And it's all so absorbable in cost and very inexpensive to manage. Thank you.